Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Gustavo Quiroga, Executive Director of LISC Boston.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Hello. I can see you at the bar. I know that you're there. Good evening. I'd love to grab your attention. We're going to start our program tonight and get going. If you are at the bar and you want to start moving your way up a little bit, is this too close to me? That would be wonderful. Is this too close? Okay. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's wonderful to see you all tonight. I'm gonna do the old thing. If you can hear me, clap once. All right. If you can hear me, clap twice. Why don't we do it one more time? If you can hear me, clap 3 times. Beautiful. This is really going back to my community organizing days. Welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces, new faces. Welcome to LISC Boston's Story Slam. I'm Gustavo Quiroga. I'm the very proud Executive Director of LISC Boston. Thank you. I want to personally thank you all for taking the time midweek to join us here tonight and for your support of LISC. Without your support of each of you, our work simply would not be possible. As we begin tonight's program, I want to invite you to eat the food. We have food over here if you haven't seen. We have some amazing local businesses that are sharing their wonderful deliciousness with us tonight. Gustazo Cuban Kitchen in Cambridge and Waltham, Jamaican Me Hungry in Jamaica Plain, Sweet Teas from Dorchester, and Zaz Restaurant in Hyde Park. Thank you all for being part of tonight's celebration. And I can tell that you haven't been shy already, but please don't be shy with the cash bar, because tonight 10% of the cash bar proceeds will be donated back to LISC Boston, thanks to the generosity of our catering partner, Gourmet Fresh. Thank you to Jim Little and the entire team for your generosity. For those of you who are guests to this Story Slam event for the first time, I hope you've noticed that our event is unique. Tonight we will hear from some special guests and from 4 storytellers, community leaders and LISC partners who will share a personal story that helps bring the impact of our work to life. We hope that tonight's Story Slam provides you with a renewed appreciation for our work and mission and inspires you about what is possible as we look to the future with an expanding strategic focus. Before we jump into tonight's program, I want to acknowledge our incredible LISC Boston staff and our 18-member local advisory council, chaired by Lisa Joyner of TD Bank. Thank you for your commitment to LISC. I also want to thank all of tonight's Story Slam sponsors whose generosity made tonight a reality. I want to specifically highlight the support of our champion and visionary sponsors, Eastern Bank, Leader Bank, Richard Taylor and Nubian Square Development, and our friends at Win Companies. Thank you to all of you. Now, let's get to the Story Slam. We are fortunate tonight to have Teresa Okokan, a writer, entertainer, and most importantly for tonight, an acclaimed storytelling coach, with us to set the stage. Please welcome Teresa.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. How are you all doing? Good. I'm very, very, very excited to be here. So, as Gustavo was saying, this is the 5th annual Story Slam. I think this is my 3rd year working with this event, and I have the honor of coaching the storytellers and helping the storytellers kind of through coordinating their stories and getting everything ready so that they can give you a little piece of their hearts and a little piece of their lives and a little piece of the work that they do as well. So for those of you who are new to this event or need a little bit of a refresher, on what a story slam is. This is an evening of storytelling. Many of you work in the investment and community development space, but tonight we're not just hearing about the work, we are hearing rather from the people who are affected by and doing that work. The way that a storytelling event works is that these are first-person personal stories. These are people telling stories, true stories about their own lives. And yes, they're going to be talking about the work that they do, but they're also talking about why they are the human beings doing that work. And as I said, in addition to being the host for this evening's event, I also had the pleasure of coaching all 4 of our inspiring storytellers that we have for you this evening. Our theme tonight is commonwealth, which is a word that you can interpret in any number of ways. Of course, we live in a commonwealth, but you can also think of it as like sharing the wealth, passing the basket around, and like bringing other people to the table. And so that is something that all of our storytellers really considered from all of their different lenses of what that means to them and their lived experience and their vision for their communities. Are you ready to hear from your storytellers? Me too. So your first storyteller for this evening is Antonio DeLeslin. Antonio is originally from Charleston, South Carolina, and he has resided in Springfield, Massachusetts for more than 20 years. He's a community activist through and through, and since 2016, he's volunteered as a resident health advocate with Wayfinders, which is a housing nonprofit serving Hampden and Hampshire counties. In this capacity, Antonio has helped lead many social justice campaigns, including infrastructure justice in formerly redline neighborhoods and the Digital Equality Coalition. He is a Live Well Springfield resident advocate on the Climate Change, Health, and Equity Initiative. He serves as a delegate on the State Democratic Committee, and he's a mentor and steering committee chairman for MOCA, the Men of Color Health Awareness. He's a proud father of 3 children and husband to Dolores. And Antonio is a graduate of the Clemente Program in Humanities at Bard College. Please join me in welcoming to the stage storyteller Antonio DeLeslin.
Good evening. If you could hear me clap, no, I need the glasses. Okay, my journey, like the rest of the co-storytellers, we were passionate about something and we acted on it. I'm here to share a bit of my advocacy work as a resident health advocate working with Wayfinders, a housing nonprofit in Springfield that is leading neighborhood revitalization in my community. Me and some advocates, we were leading the work on a Healthy Hill initiative in the Mason Square area where I live. This initiative recognized that where we live directly impacts our wellness. In my neighborhood, which is majority people of color, we have higher rates in chronic diseases. So I knew I had to step up and step in and advocate for changes. Advocating for nearly 8 years with Wayfinders, I was a part of many meaningful initiatives. But the one I'm most proud of is sharing with you tonight is our Streetlight campaign. The campaign began with a series of neighborhood walk audits. We learned we had excessive number of streetlights out in our neighborhood. We all knew poor lighting gives space for crime to occur. Our campaign was very simple. We walked the neighborhoods to identify the streetlights that were out. We created a postcard system and wrote down the pole numbers on them. We bombarded 311 with our concerns. And we even went to Eversource's website. We spoke at a city council meeting, voicing our concerns as well. We got their attention. And we learned that Eversource actually owned all 15,000 of the streetlights. We sent a letter to the mayor advocating for immediate repairs. We strategized on how to increase the city's accountability and potentially buy the streetlights from Eversource. The city council president, who was an ally, invited us to do an interview with Western Mass News Channel 40. Our goal was for the city to transition to LED lighting, which are climate friendly and brighter. Just let me share a little story with you to help you understand why this is important to me. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. And like most kids, we would take the back way, going to candy store, friends, and even to grandma's house. I can remember when we were heading down the back way, and it was dark because the lights were out. So me and the kids, we ran through because we didn't know who was hiding in the darkness. So when some Springfield neighbors came to me with this concern, I reflected back on the days dealing with the same issues. The real problem is that when people don't recognize lights being out, we begin to accept it as the norm. For some of us, getting the streets lights on became personal. We all approached it with a problem to solve as a shared community. In the end, we identified 700 street lights that were out, and with our efforts, Eversource repaired 600 of them. And I'm happy to share that as of last year, the city started upgrading thousands of lights to LED. I felt our efforts were strongly influenced by this change. Communities are brighter, people are safe walking through their neighborhoods. In closing, as Teresa mentioned, theme is Commonwealth. Commonwealth, the word Commonwealth means being part of a mutually supported system, which is exactly how I think a healthy neighborhood functions. It's exactly what I'm trying to build in my community as a resident health advocate with Wayfinders. Sometimes when I'm driving home at night and I peek up in the evening sky, I remember running through those dark alleyways back in Charleston, South Carolina. And then I'll come up to our LED light posts and remember, hey, I did that. I was a part of that. I hope this story connects to you and serves as a reminder that you can do this too. I'm encouraging each one of you to lend your hearts, your time, your talents, and reach back and share some light on communities in need. Thank you very much. Thank you.
much for that story. Thank you so much for that story. When Antonio first told me that story, I get to meet with all of the storytellers in advance, and I meet with them on Zoom, and I'm pretty sure had just had, like probably, it seemed like a 12-hour workday that he was getting done with, but it was like 4 p.m. And the man was exhausted, and he's like sitting in his kitchen, and he's rubbing his eyes, and I want to let him go to sleep, but we're like trying to have this conversation. And the graciousness that he showed during that, and the stories that he told me about the work that he was doing, I was so touched. And the light post story absolutely stood out to me. And I live in Chelsea, and so I drive over the Tobin Bridge to get home all the time. Yeah, Chelsea. I drive over the Tobin to get home all the time, and I look at the lights all the time now, and I think of you, Antonio. So thank you. One more round of applause for Antonio, please. All right, our next storyteller is Marilyn Sanchez, who is the office manager of LISC Boston. Yes. I'm sure that Marilyn's got a fan club in the house tonight. She provides operational support to the staff and is the local program administrator for the LISC AmeriCorps program. Marilyn serves on the board of the Alliance Advocating Community Development by Confronting Racism, a joint initiative launched by LISC Boston and MACDC. She participated in Mission 180 as part of LISC's Resilient Communities, Resilient Families program, and has been a champion of the Community Safety Group. Marilyn served as the vice president on Nuestra Comunidad Development Corporation's board of directors. And prior to joining LISC, she worked with the Quincy Geneva Housing Corporation and Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative. Marilyn is a long-term, the bios of the people tonight are ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous who these folks are. Marilyn is a long-term resident of Boston's Roxbury neighborhood, and she was part of the Academy One Tenants Association that partnered with the Urban League to renovate Academy One property in 1997. She holds, definitely deserves a round of applause. She holds an associate degree in liberal arts. Please join me in welcome to the stage storyteller Marilyn Sanchez.
Hello, everybody. Once upon a time, I was a single mother who raised 3 daughters in the 80s. I loved my community that I was born and raised in, the South End of Boston. A beautiful community with Black and Puerto Rican families living so close together that it felt like you had more than one mom. So because of gentrification, lots of changes happened, including my parents, who were evicted from their home for no reason at all. There in a jiffy, a community leader stepped in and guided them to an apartment in the Cathedral Housing Projects. I was raised there with my CP family until I got pregnant and I moved to another part of the city. I eventually received my Section 8 certificate and tried to find a house or a home near my home, but the apartments were too expensive. So I took my Section 8 certificate and I bought it to Roxbury, one neighborhood over from the South End, from my beloved South End. You have to realize that the South End was my community. That was where my parents were, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my friends, my church, my clinic. So it was very important that I wanted to stay near. So in Roxbury, I was able to expand my community. I was able to make friends and mentors living in my new development. I became involved with the group association, a neighborhood association. I was mentored by an African-American woman who was the president of the tenant council, Miss Betty Green. And she was a firecracker, somebody who I really loved and I looked up to. There was crime happening in the development, and she showed me that if we stuck together, we would make a difference. Eventually, the Academy Homes Tenant Council partnered with the local CDC, Urban Edge, and helped residents secure over 202 units. We opted to stay during the partial rehab, and that wasn't easy. We were able to secure long-term affordable rents for future families there. And we received our new kitchens and bathrooms, and we kept all our families in their units. As time went on, I became formally involved in community engagement work, working for organizations that were doing great things in our community. I helped coordinate affordable housing programs that helped lots of people receive their keys to their first new homes. After helping so many people receive their keys to their homes, I eventually got mine. The process to purchase a home was a lot, and it was scary, and I almost backed out. There were so many papers to sign. While the house was still in construction, we would just get any excuse to pass it by. And one of those times, my daughter and I saw that the door was open. So we snuck in the house. We got in the middle of the house and we let it seep in that this was going to be our new home. And as all teenagers do, she picked her room that night before she left. And after the construction finished, then eventually everybody else in the family got to pick their room. I love plants and I love flowers. And in the spring and summer, we plant beautiful things. Lots of things have happened since then. We've celebrated, we've partied, we've cried, and we've even brought home grandbabies. It's been our little piece of earth that God gave us. I'm so happy that I was able to finish raising my girls there and even having some of my grandbabies there as well. I am grateful because I know that I almost didn't become a homeowner in Roxbury. Today, this community too is too expensive to purchase a home. I felt I needed to give back, and for many years, I served on the board of Nuestra Comunidad, the CDC that built my home, and with the city of Boston, and even some LISC funds. I was also involved in a LISC initiative called Sustainable Communities, the Mission 180 that Teresa mentioned. And there we created many connections between our neighborhood associations across Roxbury and Dorchester. And we also partnered with the Boston Police, and eventually we were recognized nationally for the work that we did there. My story is about me, my daughters, Janita, Jasmine, and Jackie, and so many people in the community that were created from many connections. In over 35 years in the community, through good times and bad, the work still continues, and so do I. Creating connections in our communities is a balm that helps me in my day-to-day. I get to help in my roles at LISC. I get to help a little bit to keep the work going. And one more side story before I go. In my office manager role, I get to try to get my office into a paperless office. And in one of those years, I found the blueprints to my home. And lo and behold, I saw that there was an extra storage space behind a closet that I didn't know about. And so I went home with the blueprints. I searched out the house. I found it, and that's where my Christmas decorations are today. There are too many folks that I want to mention that became part of my community, but I think of them often, those that still are in the field and those that have passed on. Thank you.
Wow. Can we give it up again for Antonio and for Marilyn? Thank you. In just a little bit, we'll welcome our final storytellers to the stage, Will Munson and Ricardo Pierre-Louise. The stories you're hearing tonight are truly examples of why LISC exists. Our mission is to work together with residents and local partners to forge resilient and inclusive communities of opportunity. It is a commitment to help the communities we serve become places where people can thrive. To achieve that vision, it means that every day our team is working to tackle some of the most pressing and persistent challenges we have as a Commonwealth. From affordable housing to climate resilience to strengthening our economic opportunity. Those challenges may seem daunting when we constantly read about them in the newspaper. They are. But there are signs of progress and reasons to be inspired. Believing we can make a difference is not a platitude. It is pragmatism in action. LISC's work making direct investments in projects and programs that move the needle on our most critical challenges is one of the reasons I was excited to join this team just 4 months ago. My background in the private sector and real estate development provides fresh perspective on how we can navigate the barriers that hold us back and offer new strategies to overcome them. And it should be noted, arriving at LISC is very much a full circle moment for me as I return to the community development work where I began my career. You see, it was many years ago, I was working at the Alston-Brighton Community Development Corporation, managing green building upgrades of the CDC's affordable housing properties. That work was made possible by LISC Boston funding in the earliest days of the Green Homes program. And in the 15 or so years since, LISC has developed into a leader in driving the green transition of affordable housing across the region and around the country. Just this month, Power Forward Communities, a coalition of LISC and other leading national community development organizations, announced it had been awarded a $2 billion, that's with a B, $1 billion National Clean Investment Fund grant from the Environmental Protection Agency. That funding will help us all support equitable building decarbonization across America and right here in Massachusetts. This is an historic investment in climate action by the Biden administration, and I and everyone at LISC are incredibly proud to be a part of it. For us here at LISC Boston, this grant will help scale our existing programs in this space, allowing us to deepen our support of community partners doing this important work on the ground. As I take stock of all the opportunities ahead of us, it's clear that to achieve our goals of building a stronger Commonwealth, we'll need to come together to solve the hardest of community challenges: building and preserving affordable housing, growing a more equitable and just economy for all, and preparing our communities for our climate and energy future. Thankfully, we're having real success and making measurable progress. On housing, we're continuing a history of helping build and preserve affordable housing through unique and low-cost lending tailored to community builders, nonprofits and CDCs, public housing authorities, and increasingly, private developers responding to the housing needs of community. Over the past 5 years, we have made over $23 million in housing-related loans, and that has unlocked more than $500 million in total development of critically needed affordable housing. On climate and energy, we're helping affordable housing owners across Massachusetts lower their energy use, carbon emissions, and operating costs. The Climate Ready Housing Program supports some of the most significant energy retrofit projects underway. And due to our success managing that program, the Healy-Driscoll administration increased funding this year 10x to $16 million. Our Star Solar program is helping 200 affordable housing owners go solar, saving $30 million in energy costs. We're also helping build the workforce our state will need for decades to come. With our Bridges to Green Jobs program, we're preparing underserved residents for entry-level green jobs with mission-aligned employers. After our latest training program in Lawrence this past winter, we're now at 60 total program graduates since 2021. Worthy. And for our Commonwealth small businesses, we continue to center economic opportunity as a major focus of our work. We aim to grow a more just and equitable economy for all by expanding opportunities to historically underrepresented entrepreneurs, helping them grow their businesses and invest in their families and communities. Just last month, we launched the latest round of our Digital Growth Accelerator program. 30 small businesses signed up from all over the state for the first of 6 cohorts over the next year. The success of this program has been recognized with funding from a congressional earmark, and it's been replicated in LISC offices across the country. We're also investing directly in promising businesses through our Massachusetts Growth Capital Fund, which was seeded with investments by our partners at Bay Coast Bank, Children's Hospital, and Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. We need not look far for success from this initiative. We're proud to have invested in 2 entrepreneurs who are part of tonight's Story Slam event. Ricardo Pierre-Louise of Privé Parking will share his inspiring story later, up from this stage. And Chef Orly Roberts, whose restaurant Zaz is here tonight, he opened Zazzy Bar in the Seaport with support from the Growth Capital Fund. It's programs like these that will help us close the dragging and pernicious racial wealth gap in Massachusetts. We're proud to be doing this work, and we won't shy away from it. And building community capacity. Through grants, technical assistance, and advocacy, we're strengthening the underlying infrastructure of the state's community development sector. So how do we get all of this work done? Well, LISC Boston benefits from the resources and support of the broader LISC organization to scale our impact. I want to thank Michael Pugh, President and CEO of LISC, who is here with us tonight. You'll hear from him later. Michael, you and your entire team, some of whom are here tonight, are a catalyst for the work that happens here and across the country. Thank you, Michael. But at a local level, we have a team of people with meaningful experience and deep issue expertise that help move these ideas forward. I have been inspired by the dedication of our LISC Boston team, what they bring to the work and the mission every day. Tina Patigny, Emily Jones, Savannah Bastante Munoz, Denise Ruiz, and Marilyn Sanchez, thank you not only for your work, but for helping make my arrival at LISC seamless, motivating, and downright fun. Thank you. I also want to give a special shout out to our own Emily Jones, who over 8 years here at LISC has become a widely respected leader locally and across the country in the LISC network, and has helped to grow our Green Homes program to the sector-leading effort it is. I am very happy to share that this month, Emily stepped up from her senior program officer role into the new deputy director role in our office. Congratulations, Emily. I don't know where you are, but congratulations. We're excited for your continued growth and grateful for your efforts. Because of this talented team, the LISC network, our local partners, our supporters like all of you here tonight, we can deliver for the communities we serve. It's easy to think of the issues our Commonwealth faces as challenges. But in doing so, we are immediately approaching this work from a place of deficit. As our storytellers are sharing tonight, there are signs of progress and inspiration, of communities growing stronger, more resilient, more equitable. And as you can tell, our reach hasn't exactly been contained by Boston's city limits, despite our name. In fact, since 1981, we have made community investments in every county in Massachusetts, except Dukes County and Martha's Vineyard, which we'll promise to investigate this summer. But over these past 4 decades, LISC has invested nearly $630 million across the state, not just in the Boston area. In fact, in the past 5 years, our geographic reach has actually expanded. There is still much to do in and around Boston, and we remain focused on that work. But we're planting the seeds of opportunity across Massachusetts because we know our housing crisis isn't contained to the city of Boston. It extends the length of the Mass Pike. The need to grow a more just and equitable economy exists as much in gateway cities like Fall River and Springfield as it does in East Boston and Roxbury. And meeting our climate goals requires an all-hands, full-state strategy. Tonight, I am proud to announce that LISC Boston is evolving to meet the moment of our most pressing challenges. Tonight, LISC Boston becomes LISC Massachusetts. It's a new look and a new name that we hope will send a signal to community partners, municipal leaders, donors, that our doors are open and we are ready to engage in this work together, investing in all of Massachusetts. Back at the Allston-Brighton CDC as a young community organizer, I learned the importance of meeting people where they were, in their homes, their businesses, their favorite coffee shop. In the coming months, the LISC Massachusetts team will take a similar approach, engaging stakeholders, old and new, across a range of communities from Western Mass to the South Coast. We'll meet folks where they are to build deeper, more trusted relationships and begin a process of understanding the community needs and issues LISC can best support. We invite you to join us in this effort, sharing new ideas, making key introductions, and yes, in conversations about expanded financial support of our work. We're grateful for your continued support and hope you'll be part of the LISC Massachusetts story, helping us forge more resilient and inclusive communities of opportunity all across Massachusetts. Brief moment here. Thank you. So, who better to have with us tonight as we put a stake in the ground as a statewide organization? Our next featured speaker understands firsthand the challenges of our state's housing crisis and the pressing need for investment in affordable housing. Secretary Ed Augustus was appointed by our governor, Maura Healey, last summer to lead the newly created Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. Secretary Augustus has spent more than 35 years in public service as a city manager of Worcester, where he led the revitalization that became known as the Worcester Renaissance, and as a state senator for the 2nd Worcester District, in addition to other impactful roles locally and within the federal government. Secretary Augustus leads the state's mission to create more homes and lower housing costs for Massachusetts residents. Please welcome to the stage Secretary Ed Augustus.
Thank you, Gustavo, and let me congratulate you on your new role. LISC Massachusetts couldn't have picked a better leader, so we look forward to working with you. And I want to thank LISC for changing your name to really reflect the work that you are doing across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You know, I think it's such an important statement. It's not just symbolic, but it really reinforces what our message is in the Healey-Driscoll administration, that the problems that are confronting us need to be dealt with by every community in the Commonwealth, whether it be the MBTA Community Act and asking every community to be part of the solution to change and remove zoning barriers that allow for the production of more housing, or our Affordable Homes Act, which the governor introduced back in October, which is the largest housing bill in the history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a $4.1 billion investment in housing with a particular focus on the most vulnerable in our population, taking the investment in capital improvements to public housing from $500 million over 5 years to $1.6 billion over the next 5 years. Think about it. Massachusetts has the largest amount of state-owned public housing of any state in the country, 43,000 units. Those 43,000 units are home to 70,000 people, many folks with very low incomes. Where in this housing crisis would those disabled, elderly, or families be if we didn't have that safety net system? But unfortunately, our public housing has not always been invested in the way it needs to be. Our public housing, like all of our housing, should be healthy and safe and dignified. And this bill is going to help us deliver on that promise. And it's important to have partners like LISC helping us do that. Government alone will never be able to accomplish all that we have, whether it be our climate agenda, whether it be our housing agenda, our workforce agenda, our economic development agenda. All of the things that LISC works on are the priorities of the Healey-Driscoll administration. So it is so wonderful to have a partner who's helping us from one end of the Commonwealth to the other, deliver on these incredibly important and pressing and timely issues. So as a new secretariat, as Gustavo mentioned, we were created June 1st with the charge to create more housing and to do it faster. And that bill is one big part of that strategy, but also implementing the MBTA Communities Act, which you hear about day in and day out. We hear often about the few communities that are fighting us, but we don't hear as much about is just in the last 10 days, 9 communities passed their zoning requirements. They did the tough work. They had the debates, they had the discussions, and they did what they needed to do. And that's going to move the needle, because what we need is the resources, the additional policy changes, and removing those local barriers. That is going to help us move the needle on this housing crisis. You know, for so many people out there, and I'm sure there's many folks here, I was listening to Marilyn's story, and it was such a great story. Shouldn't everybody in Massachusetts be able to have a story like that? The pride, the dignity of walking into your first time home, all that means for somebody. But too often in this housing atmosphere that we're in right now, with the high interest rates and the high cost of construction and the limited supply, we have so many families who are finding themselves locked out of home ownership opportunities. Many people in this room have probably tried to buy their first home or have a son or daughter who has, and come up short time and again when they put an offer in and it goes for multiple amounts above asking. And then you have folks who are trying to rent somewhere close to where they work and can't find a decent place to rent that they can afford close to where they have to work. And they're making decisions that we don't want them to make, to leave a job, to pull the kids out of school, to go somewhere further away where they can find an affordable place to live. We can do better in Massachusetts. And this administration is committed to working with partners like LISC to do better so that everybody in this state is able to find a healthy, safe, and dignified place to call home. So congratulations, LISC, and look forward to working with you in the future.
I'm a little bit shorter than our last speaker. All right, well, welcome officially to this event with LISC Massachusetts. One more round of applause for the change, please. Are you ready for your last 2 storytellers of the evening? As am I. All right, so your next storyteller is Will Munson, who is a senior project manager with Homeowners Rehab. Will joined HRI in July of 2017 through the 2017-2019 CUNE Fellowship Program. While at HRI, he's helped with several projects in Cambridge, including the rehabilitation and financing of 60 units in Auburn Park, the financing of Concord Highlands, which was a new construction with 98 units, and the financing and rehabilitation of 808 Memorial Drive, which has 300 units. Will received a master's in city planning degree from MIT focused on housing, community, and economic development. And he was involved in the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston Affordable Housing Development Competition, both as a participant in 2016 and as a student coordinator in 2017. Prior to HRI and graduate school, he worked as a research associate at the Urban Institute in Washington, D.C., and received a BA in economics from Wesleyan University. I told you that all of these bios are a mouthful, these people. Jeez Louise. He also plays the saxophone in a band of urban planners. Please join me in welcoming to the stage storyteller Will Munson.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Good. My name is Will. I work at HRI, and I'm going to be talking about the initiative we've had in the last few years installing solar PV on all our roofs, or many of our roofs. Initiative that started actually with an email from Emily Jones back in 2021, kind of out of the blue, with a STAR grant. And then lo and behold, it began this long winding journey with Resident Energy, our partner in all this, to install 43 new systems on our roofs across our portfolio. So Emily reached out, thank you. Emily reached out again recently and asked me if I wanted to speak at this Story Slam. And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. You know, what do you want me to talk about? I'm ready to dive right into the Section 48 income investment tax credit changes in the Inflation Reduction Act. I can talk about how they pair with the low-income housing tax credit in complicated ways, or this ecosystem of sharing net metering credits through all our portfolios that we're setting up with Resident Energy. And Emily was like, thank you. Thank you. But we're actually looking for something a little less technical, a little more personal. Sorry, my alarm's going off. A little more personal. I think the word she used was compelling. She wants you all to be still awake by the time I'm done talking. But I was, at Resident Energy a few weeks ago for brunch and got into the details. And I love that. And I think, I'd rather be talking about the details than about myself personally. But if you want a personal, compelling story, I guess without further ado, I'll do my best. So I guess to paraphrase the movie Goodfellas, as far back as I can remember, I wanted to be a policy nerd. I grew up in a town called Oak Park, Illinois, which is on the west side of Chicago. And it was an amazing place to grow up, diverse place, a lot of opportunities, great education. It's kind of one of those areas of geographies of opportunity you always hear about. But even as a young kid, I could see just over the border in Chicago, there were lots of areas that didn't have those opportunities. So I think from a young age, I realized the importance of geography, where you grow up, to get access to all those opportunities, how important that is. And by means of getting access to that, housing as a mechanism, as a ticket to those opportunity areas. So I knew I wanted to do something working on these policy areas with housing, didn't quite know what. I went to the Urban Institute, as Therese was saying, after I graduated from college, and again, working the details and the policy weeds, doing these econometric analyses, statistical programming and software, and writing all these white papers for our various funders. And it was an amazing place to be after college, and I learned a lot. But I also knew it was, a little bit too removed from these on-the-ground issues that I kind of wanted to get back to. And it wasn't until I got to MIT for planning school that I realized that affordable housing development was something that one could do for a career. But when I found out it was the perfect fit for me, my skill set, my interest. You're working in Excel, you're reading all these papers, you're working with all these people, and then at the end of the day, you have this big, beautiful building that's real and built and with real people living in it. So I think it was the right place for me to be. And then furthermore, I was lucky to end up at a place like HRI in Cambridge, who's been building and maintaining affordable housing for over 50 years in Cambridge. And kind of is the perfect place to be because it allows me to kind of address all these socioeconomic policy issues that I was always so interested in trying to fix. And so in addition to providing affordable housing in a place like Cambridge, which is no small feat, we have the resources and capacity to address a lot of other socioeconomic issues that are work with our residents. So we have a scholarship program that provides our residents who want to pursue further education with the means to do so. We have free food program, bringing groceries to people who are food insecure. And then most recently, I've had this huge initiative to put solar PV on as many roofs as possible. So that directly lowers the operating expenses, of course, of all the buildings. And in some cases, we're actually sharing some of our net metering credits, again, in complicated ways that we've worked with residents to set up with our residents living in those buildings, so directly lowering their operating, their utility bills, which is all great. So I think, why am I talking about myself? What does this have to do with solar PV? It's a good question. So in thinking about this compelling story, I think my story, like everyone's story, is unique, but I think, a lot of people in this room probably have elements that are similar, or maybe reflect and seems, similar paths. I think we also, us broadly, again, working in this field of community economic development, we tend to run towards these intractable issues and try and figure out ways to solve them. And I think we tend to be optimists who think, with the right combination of policies and funding and organizing and time, we can really solve any problem. And I'm one of the biggest optimistic people who know me. And I think even for me, thinking about a problem like climate change, like I can get overwhelmed and daunted and kind of feel a little bit hopeless sometimes because it's such a big issue. I mean, affordable housing is big in its own right, but it's still a regional issue. We're talking about climate changes on the whole world. So I think it can feel a little bit overwhelming to, what difference can you do, your organization do? And so, thinking about all the work we've done with Resonant, with the STAR grant from LISC in the last few years, I think hopefully this doesn't sound cheesy or trite, but I do really feel a lot of hope that, we can really make a difference. And we've increased our total solar PV portfolio 6 times over in 3 years, more than we did in 15 years before that. So I believe that works out to about 1 million kilowatt hours of production. Resonant, your Keegan over there can fact check me. He probably knows more about the solar PVs that we're putting on roofs than I do. He's one of the few people who do. So it's in the grand scheme of things, there's so much more we need to do. But I think the amount that we've accomplished in those few years has given me a lot of hope, energy, no pun intended, to keep doing the hard work over the years and really decades ahead to keep decarbonizing our portfolio, keep working with my colleagues and folks in the Cambridge communities, our residents, our funders, to keep working to decarbonize, electrify, meet our climate goals in our organization. So I think in sharing my story with you, I'm hoping also in this theme of Commonwealth, you guys can take some of that energy as well back to your own personal lives, your organizations, if it's climate goals or whatever goals you have in your economic development role or field, and just take some of that hope back and realize that you can accomplish some big things that seem kind of intractable and daunting and impossible. You just have to take it a little bit at a time, and there's plenty of resources out there in the world. There's both financially, but also most importantly in this room with other people working on the same issues, figuring out similar problems. And so I'm also available if you need a policy nerd to talk to about any of your projects, or any of your figuring out your complicated solar problems. I'm always happy to help. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Will, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your story. Will just I don't know, you probably caught the vibe here. He just immediately comes off as just a good solid dude. And that is also how he came off on the Zoom. Just you get on the Zoom with Will and you're like, yeah, that's a good dude. That's a good dude right there. That's a good dude doing good work, And tonight, not to embarrass him too much, but he told me that when he first met his girlfriend, they bonded over talking about housing policy. And I was like, did you? Or was it you talking about housing policy? But she sort of agreed when I asked her, so sure. One more round of applause for Will, please. All right, our final storyteller for this evening is Ricardo Luis. Ricardo is the visionary CEO of Privé Parking, a driving force in the valet parking industry. And I also love this bio because there's a ton of parking puns in it. Let's see if you can find them. Since founding the company in 2012, Ricardo has worked to revolutionize the customer service experience by providing unparalleled parking solutions. A graduate of the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth, Ricardo brings a unique blend of financial acumen and entrepreneurial spirit to his role. With an unwavering commitment to excellence, Ricardo ensures that every client receives the best first and last impression. At Privé Parking, Ricardo and his team guarantee safe drivers, top-notch customer service, standardized operations, and high professionalism for every establishment and special event they serve. Through collaboration and relentless pursuit of customer satisfaction, Privé Parking continues to raise the bar in the industry. I think that line could have a parking pun. I don't know what it could be, but I think there's a missed opportunity there. With Ricardo at the helm, Privé Parking is poised to provide exceptional parking solutions, prioritizing customer experience, reliability, and professionalism. His passion, expertise, and commitment to excellence make him a true industry leader. Please join me in welcoming to the stage storyteller Ricardo Luis.
Can everyone hear me? So I have a slideshow. I felt like pictures are cool, and if you guys get bored with me, at least you'll look at the pictures and say, that's pretty nice. Wow, what an introduction. It's an honor to be here in front of you all tonight. Before I begin, I would like to thank one of my biggest heroes, who so happens to be in the room, my father. I would also like to thank LISC for the recognition and for believing in me as an entrepreneur. My name is Ricardo Lewis, and I'm the owner and founder of Privé Parking. I can't see if it changed, so it did. Perfect. All right. So my story begins in college at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. I was going into my junior year, and I wanted to get a part-time job. I was inspired by the famous movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I know. So I applied to be a valet parking attendant in Boston. I got hired by the biggest valet parking company in the city. It was fun. I had the opportunity to drive really nice cars and meet really cool people, like Tom Brady. I know. Sorry, I got lost. You guys was personal. But okay. So I got to meet pretty cool people like Tom Brady, and it was fun, and I loved it. And I built a reputation as Ricardo the Valet. After I graduated college with a finance and economics degree, I got a corporate job. Well, after 6 months working in corporate America, I realized the corporate life wasn't for me. I'll never forget working that long weekend in my office, and my phone rings. It's my valet buddy. He calls me and tells me, hey, a customer came in asking for your contact today. Do you mind if I share it with him? I said, of course. He then says, no matter how good or bad of a job we do here, people still talk about you, and you should consider starting your own valet parking company. I looked at the phone as, this guy is serious. He's crazy. I'm 22 years old. I don't know anything about starting a company. He's out of his mind. And I brushed it off, and I hung up the phone. But I literally had a come into Jesus moment. I had this vision in my head of me literally starting this valet parking company. And so I went to Google, and I Googled how to start a valet parking companies for dummy. Now remember, this is the time social media wasn't a thing, and those books were pretty cool. So I seen a bunch of articles come up. I printed it out, and I stayed in the office late night reading through all these articles. And when I left those doors that night, I told myself I wasn't coming back. So the next day, I approached all the restaurants I used to work at as a valet, and I pitched my new company. As you guys can imagine, there was a lot of discussions and certainly a lot of no's. But I finally got a yes. And that yes came from a restaurant in the South End called Toro. You can clap. Now, when Toro became my client, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I struggled. My dad's right there, you can ask him. I struggled for the first 6 months. It was tough. I didn't know what I was doing. I said I was building a rocket ship and flying it at the same time. That's the stage I was in. But I got a break. Toro made the front page of the Boston Globe as the #1 restaurant in the city of Boston. I was excited. So I bought a bunch of copies. And what I did is I went all throughout the cities to other restaurants, and I literally would pitch, don't you want to be like the #1 restaurant? Don't you want to use Privé Parking? And it worked. I went from 1 restaurant to 10, and I went from a team of 2 to a team of 20, and I was on a roll. Now, in 2014, Boston had a new mayor, Marty Walsh. He was coming into my local YMCA to speak about pressing issues in the city, and he was talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I looked at it as an opportunity to go to this event, and some way, somehow, stick out. And that's exactly what I did. I asked a question that changed my life. I asked the mayor, Mr. Marty Walsh, how many Black-owned parking companies are in the city of Boston? Can you guys guess his answer? He confidently said none. So I corrected him, and I said, my name is Ricardo Lewis, and I'm the owner of Privé Parking, and I'm a Black-owned business in the city of Boston. And he was on the spotlight. Not only did that question create a strong connection, but it also created a long-lasting friendship with Marty Walsh. A few days after, I get a phone call to come into City Hall and to meet the mayor. Now, you can imagine my anxiety level and my stress level. I didn't know if the mayor was calling me in to kick me out of the city or if he was going to do something positive and great for me. But that day came, I spoke with the mayor, and I told him my story, and he was really impressed. He was so impressed that he introduced me to a bunch of real estate developers all throughout the city of Boston. And at that time, think about it. I was building my business. I developed a great relationship with the new mayor in town. Things were looking great until COVID-19 happened. As you all know, COVID-19, we all felt like our world came to an end. So did I. All my clients closed their doors, and I didn't know how I was going to survive this thing. I remember staying up late at night looking for all different types of opportunity when it comes to funding just to keep my company afloat. It was hard. It was devastating. I poured so much into this company and built a brand. To think about it all coming to an end, I couldn't take it. Most importantly, I couldn't take the fact I might have to go to corporate America. I remember being up late at night, and there was this drill. I remember being up late at night, and I went to bed pretty late. And I remember waking up at like 6 in the morning from this drilling noise outside my apartment. And I remember saying to myself, how is drilling going on right now? Aren't we in a pandemic? And then a light bulb went off in my head. I realized if construction was still going on, then real estate development was still going on. It just slowed down. And thanks to Marty, he introduced me to a bunch of real estate developers. So I picked up my phone, I started calling them, and I would say, hey guys, remember me? Marty introduced me, Ricardo Lewis. I want to add value to your development team. Matter of fact, I want to help you diversify your development team. And it worked. My first client was the Cronin Group. And from there on out, a new line of business was built within Privé Parking, parking and transportation consulting. Today, we are now proud partners with the Boston Red Sox, WS Development, and HYM. And we built a pretty cool reputation as a pretty cool consulting company in Boston. So now let's fast forward to July 2023. The NAACP is coming to town. They announced that they're having their 114th national conference in the city of Boston. The last time they'd been in Boston was 1982, and that was during a race riot. The new mayor and the new governor made this a priority to showcase that the city of Boston can host a convention this big. So I got a call once again from the mayor. Hey, Ricardo, we would love to have you assist with us on consulting to help us identify other local small Black-owned businesses to participate within the NAACP Convention Center. When the mayor calls you and asks you for a favor, you never say no. So that's what I did. I remember sitting in all these different meetings and listening to all the transportation issues. Remind you, this time the Sumner Tunnel was closed, so you can just imagine all the issues and concerns while the Sumner Tunnel was closed and we're trying to move 10,000 people throughout the Seaport District. So I was in a meeting and I stood up and I said, you know what, guys? I'm gonna run the transportation contract. I remember the eyes and everyone just looking at me like I was crazy. And that's exactly what I did. If I could move 100 cars, I looked at it as, well, I can move 100 people. So I got the right consultants, the right bus operator partnership, and I formed a team and I put a bid in for the transportation contract. After 30 days of review and evaluation, Privé Parking was awarded the transportation contract from the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority. This was game-changing. This was the first time that a local Black-owned business was awarded a major contract from the Convention Center. This is 2023, guys. So, As you can see, my journey is exciting, challenging, and still ongoing. Privé Parking is more than a mobility and logistic company. We are a representation of the Commonwealth. We are a symbol of resilience, innovation, and the true definition of never giving up. There are other privé parkings in different industries, and I challenge you all here tonight to identify them, support them, and invest in them. Thank you.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Oh, it's kind of loud. Okay. It's good to see everyone. I'm glad everyone stuck around because this is such a great show and event. My name is Lisa Joyner, and I have been the chair of the Local Advisory Council for almost a year, but I've been part of the board for 7 years. I'm also on the LISC Connecticut board, and I chair the investment committee. So you can tell that I have a lot of love for LISC. Throughout my banking career, I've been involved and worked with LISC since the 90s on the East Coast as well as the West Coast. And the reason is I've been very impressed with the tremendous impact that they make. Their comprehensive approach they bring to local communities as they strive to close gaps around wealth, health, economic development, and social justice. They bring impressive national recognized strategies to the forefront and are able to replicate solutions across both national and local levels. They really know how to create communities of opportunity. They also offer their expertise to community organizations to help them be at their best, whatever it may be, via grants, technical assistance, equity, and that's really something that I really appreciate in being in the community development field, to see the work that they do with other organizations. They help with solutions, best practices, and a lot of their programs are innovative. Things like green home initiatives, Bridges to Career, financial opportunity centers, and the work that they do with AmeriCorps. Another reason I've enjoyed working with LISC is the advisory board. We have a really great group of people who just put their all into helping the organization kind of move forward. And I'm also absolutely, like, my favorite is the staff. It is a very small staff, but they are mighty and they're very impressive. And so with that, I think we should give them a round of applause because I love them. I'm also really excited for not only the staff, but Gustavo, and looking forward to seeing his leadership and see the direction that we're going into. Especially, it's so awesome to see LISC Massachusetts. And lastly, the other hat that I wear is I do work for TD Bank, and we've been a partner with LISC nationally as well as locally in supporting a lot of the affiliates from Maine to Florida. So that makes me excited as well. Now for the best part. For the next speaker, I have the pleasure of introducing Michael Pugh, President and CEO of LISC, who began in October of 2023. Michael has more than 30 years of experience in banking, with a particular focus on expanding access to capital for underserved families, businesses, and communities. He spent more than a decade at the Harlem-based Carver. Oh my gosh, my things are messed up, so sorry. Leading the nation's largest publicly traded African-American operated bank with more than $720 million in assets. Earlier in his career, Michael was a senior vice president at Capital One, where he oversaw 75 banking centers and $3 billion in deposits in Maryland, DC, and Delaware. Prior to that, he was a senior vice president at Citizens Financial Group, leading retail banking in Michigan and Indiana, and overseeing 67 banking centers. I loved all this banking. It's great. So with that, Michael.
Good evening. All right, so Right now, my voice is doing fine. I've been hoarse for the past 2 days, so if at some point it kind of goes out, you'll know that it's nothing to do with here. It's just having been hoarse a bit. Let me first just start off by saying I'm very excited to be here and to share this special moment with you all. You heard Lisa say that I've been with LISC now for 6 months, and time has been flying by very fast. I'll tell you, I've been from East Coast to West Coast, visiting our local offices, meeting with community leaders, elected officials, and of course our teams, our colleagues, to understand more about the priorities that we have, the things that we must continue to focus on. And I'll tell you that Gustavo is the first hire of an executive director while I've been the CEO. So very excited about that. And when his resume came across, yes. When his resume came across my desk and the team shared that they were excited to be able to hire him, I took one look at it and I said, you better get him quick before someone else snatches him. And, I then said that I was going to wait until he was settled before coming out to spend some time with him. And let me tell you, though he's been here for approximately 4 months now, the work that he's done in a 4-month window certainly feels like he's been here much longer and knows the full lay of the land with LISC. So we're very glad to have him. I want to thank him, and I also want to take the opportunity to thank his team, our local advisory committee, many of our community partners who are here today, and to also recognize one of our other organizations that's part of the LISC family, National Equity Fund, that happens to be here in the room. And many of you may know that National Equity Fund, while they are a separate company, they are certainly part of the LISC family, and the work that they do in the low-income housing tax credits and a number of other areas makes a significant difference for so many across our country. So for all of those individuals that I just mentioned, if you would indulge me and just give them again another big round of applause. I'd also say I'm excited to be part of the LISC journey during this particular time because we're really focused on how we might engage in climate resiliency and do meaningful work. You heard Gustavo talk about $2 billion federal allocation as part of a greenhouse gas reduction fund. Well, the great news about that is, though we are part of a coalition, we have approximately $570 million of that funding that will be made available for us. So Massachusetts, where we have been for 40 years and for 15 years, a little over 15 years already doing the work focused on green, will certainly be one of our top priorities in terms of where we're spending those dollars. And we're excited about that. I'll add that the dollars that we have allocated aren't enough when we simply think about the work that has to be done. So part of what will be meaningful for us all is to engage private funders and partners to work very closely with us. We have an incredible opportunity for every $1 that we put forth, the ability to be able to multiply that and turn it into a leverage of $7 through this program. And that's through the jobs that will be added, through the technical assistance and training that will allow many of our entrepreneurs to qualify for green energy and climate resiliency contracts, and for the work that, frankly, we will do to improve everyday American households in terms of decarbonization there. We're excited about all of this work, and we know we'll be sharing more about that journey with you. Let me also just point out that as you've heard me say over the past 15 years or so, LISC Massachusetts has been doing incredible work in this green space, and today presented an opportunity for me to hear firsthand from many of our community leaders and the people that have been directly impacted by our programs. And let me share with you that if after hearing those stories, one doesn't then realize that there's no place else better to be than LISC, well, I don't know what else would do it. The stories were not only powerful and compelling, but they talked about and they touched on the real journey that people were moving from to finding jobs or the ability to be able to provide housing, the technical assistance components, all of these critical things. And so when you consider LISC, there have been three big areas that are our core competencies. The first one is housing. For years, we have been, since 1979, our start, we have been at the epicenter of housing. Housing now is approaching what we might even consider an epidemic in terms of the shortage at a national scale. Studies are suggesting that by 2030, more than 50% of the single-family home housing will be owned by the investor community, thereby making it almost impossible for everyday Americans to be able to afford their first home. And LISC continues to do the work to try and make sure that we are supporting the accessibility to housing, being one of the housing and urban development leaders in terms of HUD certification and working with CDCs to ensure that we get money out there for them. The second area where we have continued to spend time is to think about community development and capacity building. And that's our work, like what we've done here within Massachusetts on the LISC Green side, as well as of a number of other things, our small business efforts, safety and justice, childhood and education, and healthy foods. The programs that we play a critical role in supporting, all in an effort to help make sure that once you've got good quality housing, you've got the ecosystem that ranges from small businesses to education and healthcare, allowing you to live in communities that remain healthy. And we remain focused on that. The third area I would tell you that we continue to focus on is working very closely with municipalities through an entity that we have called LISC Fund Management. It allows us to work very closely by raising capital for affordable housing programs and ensuring that investors get paid back. So you might be wondering, why am I telling you all this stuff? Well, for me, I'm telling you because I spent the first 90 days saying, what is it that we do again? In all seriousness, I knew a lot about what we did, but I also wanted to better understand if there was anything that we would say no to. And I can tell you the work that we are focused on, all roads lead to building healthy communities. Yes. And so as I close out my comments and we think about the work that we will continue to do here in LISC, Massachusetts, I think it's also important to comment on our LISC rural team, which does a fantastic job. And so some of you may have noticed my Midwestern accent when I said rural. I always think it sounds a little bit like Scooby-Doo when I'm saying it, but our LISC rural team has been working with 3 CDCs here in Massachusetts to help ensure that we are supporting housing throughout this great state, and we will continue that work. So as I close my comments, I'll just simply say again, sincere congratulations to the entire team here in LISC, Massachusetts for having been able to hook an incredible leader that is now part of the group. And I look forward to all of the great things we're going to be doing together. Thank you all for being here.
All right, I came up here without notes, which means we're wrapping up. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, for supporting our work, and I want to thank our entire team, the LISC Massachusetts team, for making tonight possible. Thank you. I want to thank our storytellers. Michael, thank you for being here. Secretary Ed Augustus and Lisa Joyner. We are so grateful that you took the time to be with us tonight. We hope to work with you as we move forward. We're going to engage in conversation with you. Pick up the phone when I call, because we need your help. And I hope you have a wonderful night. Enjoy the bar. We'll be here for a little bit. Thank you.